Well, we are less than 24 hours away from tomorrow's Cheez-It Citrus Bowl game between Iowa and Tennessee, and our Local 5 sports team is there following all the action. They join us live now from Orlando with the latest.
Hey Dana, yeah, as we get closer to the game, it wasn't really the topic of conversation this morning when we got to hear from both coaches.
Yeah, there was next to no mention of the game, only 2 questions asked. The majority was talked about how the coaches would fix college football, but I've got bad news. The game of college football will not be fixed by tomorrow, but the game will still be played, and on the field, it's going to be kind of opposite rosters. Iowa will be mostly the exact same team as we saw in the Big Ten championship game. They had no opt-outs and very few transfers. Tennessee, on the other hand, has multiple players opting out, including their starting quarterback and top 2 leading rushers. The Volunteers have also lost several key starters to the transfer portal. I asked Kirk Ferentz why it's different at Iowa than any other program around the country.
Despite all the changes right now, there's still, I think there's still players out there that want to do it for the right reasons. You know, we've been really fortunate to have a lot of good guys. And it's usually the guys in the front of the room are the ones that are, you know, I mentioned Lachey and Higgins, 2 guys that are great leaders. So they help bring other guys with them and, you know, hopefully stay focused on what really is important.
This will be the 2nd year in a row that Iowa's bowl opponent will be without their starting quarterback.
Yeah, and Kirk Ferentz, you know, he also went on to talk about, you know, just how difficult it is to prep for a bowl game when the players have a huge decision looming. And, you know, one thing that he really asked of them is just to kind of put that all to the side and just focus on the task at hand. And he actually brought up an example from 2 seasons ago when they were here at this very same bowl game in Orlando. He actually named Riley Moss as the specific example. He was one of those guys that had a big decision to make, but he actually ended up coming back for another year. And again, like I said, Ferentz just asked of his players, focus on the task at hand and be committed to this. You'll have plenty of time to think about that decision later.
It's kind of like high school kids with recruiting. Don't let that dominate your life. You're spending all the time looking over the fence, and it can be really distracting. It's hard. It's a really hard thing for the young people to go through. 2 years ago, I thought Riley Moss was a little distracted down here, quite frankly. And then he surprised us all and came back, and he was not distracted his senior year. But it's a tough thing for young people to deal with. So our request is, you know, just put it on the shelf. They've got plenty of time to make the decision when they get back.
Ferentz went on to talk about how important it is for players to make sure they have all the information they need to make an informed decision, and pointed out how all of the outside influences can really make it tough for players to decide what's right for them. But ultimately, that has to be their decision. Now, later tonight, we will have more Citrus Bowl coverage for you, including the end of an era for the Hawkeyes when it comes to Brian Ferentz.